I would like to mention that the explosion in Bandar Abbas port, as you may remember, happened at several points simultaneously. Even above that, what is it? Is it a sabotage? Was it really like that? There was no sabotage? Because the statements made by Iran itself were like that. In fact, let me look at it this way. The Interior Minister of Iran said that it was due to negligence. But we always know that Iran, even because they might have to answer, sometimes they ignore the truth, make up a completely different cover for it, believe in that scenario, and go on like that. I wonder if it's due to negligence. Is that something like that? Now, while saying this, on the one hand, I will request my friends to bring statements of Amir Avivi, an Israeli general here. He mentioned that this text contains 94 characters. This attack was aimed at fuel for ballistic rockets, and therefore, that this was not an accident but a planned attack. Look, this is coming from an Israeli general. Tehran's intentions should not be trusted. A significantly bigger bombing raid, a conclusive strike, capable of incapacitating Iran's ability to retaliate, is necessary to definitively end the war. Could this be considered an official Israeli acknowledgement of our involvement in this conflict? Can it be considered valid?
One of them did not have a subject.
No,
Their statement is very clear, but it is targeting. They are pointing at the United States of America or themselves, and we don't distinguish them much from each other when you think about this character, and you see that there is a very strategic side to it. That is to say, directly to the fuel of ballistic rockets, of ballistic missile rockets. And a decisive blow in the last item is to paralyze Iran's ability to respond.
Let's finish Iran and attack them directly so that they cannot respond to us in any way.
We have seen something like this in the past 2 years, for example. When Israel hit the Iranian consulate, Damascus responded with ballistic missiles.
Embassy attack on April 1st?
Yes.
It had happened. He replied on April 13th, and we kept saying today, tomorrow. When did we reply?
They had bombed the fire that he had unleashed with his ballistic missiles, but it landed on Israel's borders.
As the news is still news, there is all kinds of news.
In fact, in the similar scenarios that followed, we always saw this in Iran's responses to Israel, its assassination in Tehran, etc. It was so demonstrative, whether it was over Jordan, etc. Not only Israel itself eliminated those threats in the air, we have already seen that the US also supported those operations there. Now, when you make such a show of demonstration, it already points to something. Yes, Iran's capacity to respond is limited, but it also makes Israel a hittable country. This is a vortex that Israel has put itself into. At the end of the day, yes, it makes Iran as useful as it wants, but at the end of the day, if you are not going to go to war, Iran needs to be able to come up with an answer for the regime to at least stay there. If you want to keep Iran in a constant state of tension and you don't want to, you have to go in and occupy it, or you have to destroy it. You intensify airstrikes, etc. You see that Israel has no such intention. At least it doesn't want to do it by its own hand. It wants the US to do it. We have been seeing this for at least 2 years. The ideal scenario for Israel is for the US to come and hit Iran. If possible, invade Iran. This is the perfect scenario for Israel, but the US is not doing anything like that. As a red line, it is said that we do not want a regional war. Now, in this environment, mutual attacks with Iran, each time the dosage increases, but each time the myth of Israel's hittability, it's becoming more and more in our face. So you're telling Iran, you have to give a small file victory at the end of that day. Iran is already responding in a way that will not lead to a war, in a way that will not harm Israel, at least in a way that will not cause material losses. Now, there is something like this in this environment. And this was such a vortex that at the end of the day, Israel and Iran had to go to the point where a war was inevitable on both sides, because each next attack came with more force than the last. No matter how much it did not evolve into a war, this is where it would have gone if there had been no intervention. It was inevitably a war. But what did the US do? As soon as it arrives, set the ceasefire table, and Israel actually pulled out of that vortex. Took it, because there was nowhere left for it to go in Syria on the Lebanese side. They have already destroyed Hezbollah. It cannot reach political military targets in Gaza. You can't drive it to Egypt, etc. The only option there is now, it was to bring Israel to a ceasefire table with the intervention of the United States. So maybe actually the plane of the conflict, it changed the plane of the crisis in an instant. It changed its ground, and the US and Israel pulled it from there. But in any case, since the ceasefire table was broken again today, again, Israel and the Netanyahu government, just like Trump, and the Hamas issue that they still can't solve, that is, they can't defeat Hamas no matter what. I mean, they map Gaza 3 times, 4 times, they keep hitting, but not the civilians there. You can turn it around. You can't create enough fear in the region to make the civilians there move to Egypt, nor can you get the support you want from the US. Yes, Trump is making ridiculous statements about Gaza. He is going to turn it into a resort, etc. But these things that remain at the level of rhetoric, at the end of the day, it is very debatable how possible it is to be realized. Now this is creating a vortex again. Again, Israel is getting itself into the same thing.
Yes. Please complete
just like
your speech.
The United States, Iran today is again a rescue hammer for Israel, and it's a weaker Iran than it was 2 years ago. And this is where this statement becomes very important, to make the ability to respond even less than it was 2 years ago or 1 year ago. I mean the fuel for ballistic rockets. So actually pruning a capacity there for the purpose.
I wonder if those facilities were targeted because they are one of the nuclear production points. It must have been a much bigger airstrike. Now you said that there is no subject in these sentences. I mean, yes, a general of Israel is making a statement, but such an attack was carried out by Israel, and I think Iran deserves it. In the end, it should be much bigger. There is no subject, you are right, but it should be a much bigger airstrike. You know the declaration of intent? We all know that. But you can use it to say that the attack from the Iranian side was carried out by Israel. Because he realized it, he reads it. The issue does not evolve into a more complex point here.
Even if Iran reads it or even knows about it, as I said at the beginning,
say it,
the
like
answer
I said
will
at the
not
beginning.
be given.
Yes,
it has to
there
keep
will be
it
no
secret.
response.
So at the end of the day, there's nothing that Iran can bring to Israel to re-escalate any tensions.
There will be no response.
Yes. Normally, Iran's deterrence, as I said, came from its asymmetric capabilities. I mean, we are talking about a distance of 1,500 kilometers between Iran and Israel. Let them send these missiles to each other between these distances. Okay, laughs. But Iran's main deterrent here was the presence of Hezbollah right near Israel's borders. And the rocket attacks, saturation attacks that could come from there were there as a threat. Or the Houthis in Yemen are there again as an alternative way for Iran to respond. The Shimilists in Syria similarly, and so on. But now there is none of that. So we can only talk about the Houthis. We see that the US has a rescue appeal there as well. They see it as a useful space. They are studying there right now. Now in such a situation, as you said, Iran's not going to be able, I think it would be more convenient for him to ignore it.